I was recently wasting my life on Twitter, as you do, when I came across a bad take. This, being the internet, is not wholly uncommon, but it happened to be a thermonuclear bad take, in an area in which I happen to have a little bit of expertise. MMOs.
It's an MMO, grinding is the point.
What's the haps? I'm Maroka, and today I'm going to give you my professional gaming opinion on grind. Really, Maroka? You're going to take one bad opinion on Twitter that basically no one agreed with and make a thing out of it? Well, kind of, yeah. Whilst I've not come across a concept quite as tragically awful as grind is the point of the game before, grind is certainly one of those things in gaming which divides opinion, so I want to explore the concept, where it can be used and where it can be justified. Let's start from basics and assume you've no idea what I'm talking about. Grind is essentially any tedious and repetitive task in a game which is fairly unengaging in itself, but which has a reward that, in theory, makes it worthwhile. If you have the patience to grind grain into flour, you are rewarded with delicious bread. We slog our way through the daily grind of our jobs in pursuit of a paycheck to hopefully make it worthwhile. If you invest the time to properly grind your coffee beans, you can have tasty coffee to get you through that job. And maybe, just maybe, if you grind 100 hours into the MMO you play, you can look slightly different to the other players. In this specific context, our Twitterer was talking about Temtem, because of course he was. Temtem has raised the ire of the grind subject in two ways. Firstly, it currently takes a long time to earn money in-game relative to the cost of items. I recently committed myself to earning the money for a new skirt for my character, purchased from one of the first shops the player encounters. I was able to earn 3,000 to 4,000 of the in-game currency per hour, and the skirt in question cost 25,000. So suffice to say, it took a while. The mechanics of doing so are to repeatedly capture and release creatures in the game over and over again. It's not thrilling. I gather, at time of writing, the most lucrative location in the game for earning money will bring in about 7,000 per hour? So that's multiple hours of unengaging gameplay, just to make myself look pretty. Do I have to do that? Technically, literally, no. But in another more meaningful sense, yes. It is by its design a social experience, and looking cool, looking different is a major part of the genre. The literal fact that I and others will absolutely spend multiple hours doing nothing of value to wear a skirt is proof enough that it is an important aspect of the game. Jim Sterling has an excellent video on this, and I'll let him explain. The second way Temtem approaches grind is through Luma Temtem, a system analogous to shiny Pokemon, but all you really need to know is that they're a different colour, and they are extremely rare. And some people really want them, and it's going to take them an incredibly long time to get. I do want to stop at this stage and highlight that Temtem is an unfinished game with mechanics which are incomplete or unbalanced or even occasionally totally broken, so it's definitely not my intention to drag it here so much as it is to take its examples as a way to highlight an issue across many games. All of these issues, whilst currently in the game, have the potential to be fixed or rebalanced out at a later date. The fundamental problem with these grindy mechanics is that they disrespect the player's time. If I, the consumer, have been good enough to give you money for your product, and it transpires that quite a significant amount of my time spent with your product is just wasting my own time in order to make the experience marginally better later on, then this is a dysfunctional relationship that's not going to work out. If I'm dating you and I say, yep, we can have sex, but only if you do all of the chores around the house for the next month solidly while I chill out and watch Netflix, eventually you're going to tell me to do one because it's not worth it. I'm not respecting your time. Okay, that's a rough analogy. I've been told relationships do involve a bit more than sex and chores, but I think it still works. What muddies the waters in the gaming world is the presence of free-to-play games. Once that barrier to entry of payment has been removed, all that remains is investment of time. Free-to-play titles routinely ask us to invest huge amounts of time in exchange for rewards, all the while offering the promise that you could maybe just skip this and go straight to the reward if you were to pay money instead. And many people do. It's all a part of a complicated, exploitative ecosystem, but at least it makes sense. It's this justification that I think can give the sense, at least to some players, that the grind is the point. We're in an era of free-to-play games created by developers who know that the longer you play, the more you will on average pay, so they just need to keep you on the hook as long as possible, And how better to do that than with interminable busywork? If every game is rammed full of grind, then is that the point? There's nothing else going on, really, so it must be the raison d'etre. Even this shallow justification rather falls apart once we leave the free-to-play space, though. If we're paying full price up front, then what is the grind for? It's not to entice us to pay money to skip it anymore, and it is, by its own very definition, not fun, so it can't be the point of the game. And now we're getting more subjective. Your idea of a fun core game loop might be my idea of repetitive mediocrity, but even the most exhilarating rollercoaster ride will probably start to wear thin the 50th time around in a row, and for what it's worth, I don't consider capturing Temtem an exhilarating rollercoaster ride. So then what else could the grind be for? Pride and accomplishment? Well, that was the argument the EA community team made when they posted the most downvoted comment in Reddit history, defending their choice to have a 40-hour grind to unlock Darth Vader in Star Wars Battlefront 2. Their argument was obviously disingenuous since the game offered loot boxes on top of the entry price in what can only be described as a shit cocktail of awful industry practices. But however proud you might be, it's certainly not an accomplishment if the only thing required of you is your time, or your unique hat, or Luma Temtem, or Darth Vader, or whatever other shiny bauble you've unlocked is really telling other players is, I have more free time than you. This defensive grind is often offered up by players elsewhere though, because if everyone has it, then it's not special. It is a fair argument, though it's sometimes taken to extremes, suggesting that the only alternative to grind is to give everyone everything for free, which is clearly ridiculous if the point of unlocks is to encourage players to keep playing. The obvious solution is to pay close attention to game balance. Should it take a player 6 hours of grind to earn enough money to buy a simple cosmetic item early on in the game? For me, it's a no, though your mileage may vary. If cosmetics are intended to be accessible principally to endgame players only, then they certainly shouldn't be in the first shop you find. But hey, that's me specifically nitpicking balance issues in an early access title again. Here's a wild and crazy idea, though. What if we did away with the concept of grind and made the game fun instead?
He's mad! No one could ever do such a thing!
But what if they did? What if they, I don't know, made a game about sailing around an ocean in a boat, and the main thing you do is hunt down enemies and search for treasure and run errands for money? I feel like they did that, but it was pretty boring. Maybe even grindy. But what if they added giant sharks that you could fight whilst you were doing this, and enemy ships crewed by the undead, and epic battles with fortresses, and shipwrecks with sunken treasure? What if we didn't have to imagine this? What if I was very obviously talking about Sea of Thieves? Sea of Thieves at launch was guilty of all the things I've complained about today. There were only 3 types of thing to do, if you didn't specifically include picking fights with other players to stop them doing the 3 things. They took a long time, and you had to do them quite a lot to get to your ultimate reward, the title of Pirate Legend. It was absolutely a prime example of grind. But I absolutely use the past tense because I don't believe it is today. Is it easier to get to Pirate Legend than it was? Undeniably. Is it still a lot of work? For sure. Is that work a grind? No. All the features I described earlier, plus a buttload more, break up the core game loop in something that's a lot more fun. At the root of it all is still the basic pick a mission, sail to get the thing, and turn it in for rewards process, but a myriad of distractions along the way keep things new and interesting hundreds of hours later. It ceases to be a grind. The fundamental point here being that if I'm enjoying every damn minute of playing the game, I won't give a crap how many hours you demand of me to get something cool at the end of it. This is even a lesson that could stand to be taken to heart by the free-to-play space. Just because a game is free and the only thing it's asking of a player is to invest their time, doesn't mean that time spent can't be entertaining. I feel like there's an idea that because it's free, it's okay to have low expectations. We get what we pay for, right? And we didn't pay anything. And it doesn't matter if it's bad because it hasn't cost us anything. But by that point, we're disrespecting our own time. Time is money, friend, and your time absolutely has value, so why waste it on pointless grind? Dauntless is a great example of a free game I'm currently playing which has a fun core gameplay loop and doesn't feel like it's disrespecting your time. For the uninitiated, it's a kind of free-to-play monster hunter where you go forth into the wilderness to hunt giant beasties in the hopes of turning them into a wardrobe even Mr. Burns would be envious of. It has a number of mechanics which do ask the player to do a lot of the same thing. At the time of writing, there's a Valentine's Day promo going on asking players to kill up to 420 monsters, which I should stress is kind of a lot of monsters by any measure. It's got the obvious freemium alternative option of just being able to buy the shiny weapons that you could win by doing this, but I object far less to being asked to drive species to extinction when the process of doing so is fun, and slaying behemoths is. The full 420 kills is absolutely pushing the fine line between grind and fun gameplay to its very limits, but that is an accomplishment for the very most dedicated free players who really do dig the game that much. If all of these examples feel subjective, they totally are. Some people will think sailing is painfully dreary no matter how many sharks and undead hordes turn up. Some will find turning dinosaurs into vests dishwater dull, and some will find searching for glory animals with a 1 in 8,000 chance of one appearing the only thing which gives their life meaning. And far be it from me to tell anyone how to spend their time. But the next time you're playing something and ask yourself, why am I doing this? Take a moment to examine it that bit closer. Is your time being respected, and is it worth your while doing it? Because I think for a lot of us, and I've definitely been guilty of it myself, the answer might often be no, and we're just doing it because we're conditioned to. There are so many games where grinding is everything that we've just accepted that grind is the norm, maybe even the point. So go and find a game which respects your time instead. Honestly, just go play Sea of Thieves. There is an addendum to this, in that on the day that I finished writing this video essay, Sea of Thieves launched an event which they're calling the Hunter's Haul. This requires players to catch 120 fish through the fishing minigame in a week. And then, in the second week, 60 trophy fish, which are substantially harder to catch. And across both weeks, 180 of the most boring fish in the game to catch. This is absolutely an example of grind, and god damn it, Rare, I thought you were better than this. And I am absolutely a big ol' hypocrite because I'm about to go grab my fishing rod. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Moroka. This has been my professional gaming opinion on the subject of grind. I'll see you next time.